Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with these nerds.
Nathan Nerdarch.
Nerdarch is Ted.
And join us as we continue our journey through Starfinder. We're going to talk species today with the android.
Jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So we're continuing with our deep delve into Starfinder, breaking it up little by little. And we're going to go into one of our first races, or maybe they're called species now.
They are species.
That would make sense. It's a little more sci-fi or sci-fantasy, as you would. And we have the first one. We're going to start right at the beginning.
We're going to go with androids.
Makes sense.
So androids, they were originally manufactured, but over the duration of time, they eventually broke free. They're no longer...
they got rights, yo. They got rights.
They're no longer, slaves or workers. They have their own thing, and they're free to do as they want.
Although there are some sketchy places in the galaxy where, people, unscrupulous corporations and people kind of work around that. But yeah, for the most part, someone gave a really great speech at some point, and they got their rights. And so androids are actually a combination of manufactured as well as biological parts.
Right. And with that, they can either be, male designation, female designation.
Don't care.
Or they just don't have one.
Right. Or it also talks about gender fluidity, like they can change back and forth. Mm-hmm. So basically it's, whatever the android wants.
Right.
The prime stats are dex and intelligence. They're both nimble of body and mind. They're not so great with the people skills.
Well, that's because they really don't understand emotions. And that actually kind of, dovetails further into one of their characteristics that they have, where they get a -2 to sense motive, but it also increases the DC by 2 on anyone trying to do it to them.
Right.
It's like they're more secretive, but they also don't get what other people are doing.
I don't even think it's that. I don't think it's that they're secretive. They're just harder to read than other people.
Yeah.
They maybe don't respond the same way. Maybe their cues are off, intentionally or unintentionally. But, at the same time, so emotions are kind of foreign to them, but they still have them. They're not devoid of emotion. They just register with an android differently.
Right.
They're in the middle of the range for hit points, because one of the interesting things about Starfinder is both your race and your class are going to give you your hit points, or I should say species. It's a hard habit to break. Are going to give you your hit points, and they range from 2 to 6, and they get 4, which that's the middle range. Their bonuses are 2s across the board, so their positives and negatives are 2s. They're medium sized, and their type is android. Basically, they're considered humanoid and construct. For all things, depending which is worse is kind of the one you go with.
Yeah,
right.
That's part of that is because they still have a soul, even though they're made of mechanical parts and biological parts. So a lot of things affect them that would affect constructs that would also affect biological organisms or people.
But at the same time, they're resistant to a lot of things like poisons and disease, and they don't need to breathe. They don't need to eat. They don't need to sleep. Things like that won't affect them, so they can actually survive in the vacuum of space.
And that's the real crux of it, not having to breathe, being able to go into space and not affected by that, I think is going to be a major benefit in a Starfinder game.
Now, you had talked about basically, it's hard for them to sense motive and have it used against them as well. Well, that ability is called flat effect, right? Which is apropos, really, like they're just hard to read, and they look at other people and they don't really know what's going on either. So
why is your face moving so much? I don't understand all of that.
Hold that still, please. It makes me think of Total Recall.
Mm-hmm.
They have exceptional vision. They have both dark vision. They have low light vision, so they see stuff pretty good. And I think the coolest game mechanic thing they get, and we had talked about this before off air, and that is their upgrade slot.
Oh yeah, that is really cool.
And this is great. They can improve them in such a way like you would do to any kind of light armor. And we did some research, so they could even have a force field just built in. I'm just going to set this in my way.
Force field, jetpack. There's all kinds of cool
targeting
things.
systems, all different kinds of cool stuff, including armor strengthening. So they could just be, I think, tougher than normal.
Yeah, so all that is really cool. They basically look mostly human, but they might have like what looks like to be circuitry tattoos that kind of lights up. It's actually because it's circuitry under their skin. They might have a metal skeleton, but biological organs and flesh. And that's also the reason why they have a soul, because there's so much of their body is biological, and the way that they're constructed, for whatever reason, souls attached to them. They don't age. They will essentially live forever, but they don't always.
They kind of feel like everything else kind of lives and dies, so they want to recycle that soul. So typically after about 100 years, most androids will actually...
Oh, no, they don't recycle. It's not the soul they want to recycle.
Oh,
it's
sorry.
the vessel.
Sorry, the vessel, my apologies. The body they want to, allow to move on to another person, but the soul will be able to move on.
Right, and another soul will inhabit their body. So, and they don't really... It's their form of procreation. They don't see it as a form of suicide, even though it's kind of like they choose to stop existing, which they can or they can't. It's entirely up to them, which is kind of cool, unless something destroys them. And then the vessel part isn't going to matter anyway.
Forcibly recycled.
So, like, from a game standpoint, like, this really opens up some interesting ideas and concepts for me as a DM. I'm like, well, what if you have like a necromancer, a space necromancer, who's like creating androids because he knows they'll capture souls, right? So he's basically making, pardon me, he's basically making this dream catcher out of androids, but for souls. Like, and using those souls to power something, and it could be nefarious, and this could be totally be like a campaign arc or a story arc, or it's very kind of like Matrix like.
It would get really creepy if he kind of figured out what he needed to have an absolute minimum to have a soul inhabit it, and then just like giant tree stacks of those things somewhere in some ship. Oh man, that would be really creepy.
See, I'm looking at it, as other standpoints of like, okay, well, if you die and your soul is supposed to, move on, and you're DMing a story, your character dies, players really attached to that character and doesn't want to make something new. Like, you could technically, like, well, that soul finds an android body, you could just move on with that character. They just have to go find, I don't know. It's a interesting way to...
So like a reincarnation kind of thing.
So someone dies somewhere, but they get like not trapped, but attracted to some kind of android shell. Oh, okay.
But I kind of feel like the androids, they're getting new souls. Like, these aren't recycled souls. The bodies get recycled, but the souls seem to not that your idea couldn't work, or there wouldn't be a way to use that. But at the crux of the matter, the thing that's most important, it opens up all these interesting ways that you can use androids in your Starfinder game.
Absolutely.
Conceptually, it's just really cool. As far as society and alignment, they're pretty much like everybody else. They can run the gambit. They don't have their own home world. So that's worth noting. It's like wherever they were kind of made. And that's where it also talks about, for the most part, they are accepted widely and get along with most races. There's some races that they're kind of a little suspicious of, and they're very sensitive to certain issues like slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Because having been a slave race essentially. Also,
but they get along well with the Shirans because they kind of felt like they were like a mass populace as well that were mentally controlled. So it kind of fits.
Kindred spirits. Yeah, absolutely. And it also talks about they kind of judge people how they treat their servants, robots, and machines. So I thought that was kind of like tongue-in-cheek and funny.
It's like, aren't you hitting that keyboard a little too hard?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would think they would draw some distinction between non-AI units of machinery and like AI or like higher levels of machinery. That's just...
Maybe.
Logically, that would make more sense.
But they might still feel like a kindred spirit because they have mechanical parts.
Oh, yeah, same thing. Like when people are nasty to dogs, people get upset about it.
So that being said, they pretty much are well suited for every class except for, I'd say, one. Only the envoy would be a challenge for them because the envoy is very skill based and that's not the problem. But it's also
Charisma-based.
a charisma-based class, and not only that, a lot of the abilities for the envoy are also social interaction skills.
But what if you're fluent in over 6 million forms of communication?
That is true. But like as anything, you could play any kind of character you want.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the least optimized of all the choices. I think it works really well for the rest, though.
The Solarian winds up using charisma as well, but it's not as key for them. But as you said, you can mix and match anything you like.
And at first too, I was like, well, I think it's a great fit for like all the themes. But then I was like, oh, maybe there's one that it doesn't fit so much.
Xenoseeker?
No, because I could see him being curious about other
priests
races.
would be a little strange.
Priest, well, maybe, but maybe they worship technology. I was actually thinking the Icon. But then I thought back to Nate's version of Icon, where you're a physicist.
I'm the rock star scientist.
Yeah, like, well, then that could totally work, and they could fit in there.
Or you could just follow all the trends. So I mean, yeah, that should work really well.
And then also like outlaw, like when we were talking about for themes for the outlaw, like the idea that it's not that you actually did anything wrong, but maybe you were created. Well, not the vessel. You were created, and by one of these unscrupulous corporations, and they branded you as an outlaw, but because you basically escaped their bondage. Or some of them would do something where it's this form of indentured servitude where, oh no, you're not a slave, but you have to work off that body we built for you. That costs a lot of credits.
Yeah, I'd want
15 more years you're allowed to leave.
I'd want to go the other direction of like, okay, well, the vessel was an outlaw with the previous soul, did all of this kind of stuff, and then as he left because he was tired of running, the new soul inhabits it, and you find out there's all this stuff going on, and it wasn't you.
Yeah, you've got all these problems.
So I don't know what Starfinder feels in regards to any of that, or how, like, because obviously it's well known that there's a whole new vessel, or that there's a whole new soul, but how do you prove that? How do you know what's going on?
Yeah. Can we scan a chip on that or what? Your soul chip. But I don't know. There's just some ways you could use Android. That's just the gist of the Android in the Starfinder game. Guys, are you playing Starfinder? Are you playing an Android? Let us know. We got a place for it. It's called the comments while you're at it. Like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over at nerdarchy.com.
Or you can follow us over on Facebook.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.